Stand on a hilltop on a breezy day for a moment. Feel the invisible force of wind against your skin. Watch it ripple through grass and leaves. Listen to the whispered messages it carries from distant places. This is air energy in its most elemental form, invisible yet undeniably present, connecting rather than separating, constantly in motion yet impossible to grasp or contain. As you experience this subtle yet powerful force, you connect not merely with moving atmosphere, but with the psychological quality that enables all human understanding and connection. The capacity for thought and communication that bridges the spaces between individual consciousness. Air represents our fundamental psychological need for meaning, the requirement for sufficient understanding, expression, and connection to make sense of our experiences and share them with others. Without this connective element, Earth's practicality lacks context and purpose. Fire's passion lacks direction and discernment, and water's emotions lack the articulation needed for conscious integration and sharing. Air provides the meaningful framework that organizes all other elemental expressions, the patterns that give form to experience, the language that translates inner reality into shared understanding, the perspective that reveals relationships between seemingly separate phenomena. In a culture that often celebrates material achievement, emotional intensity, or spiritual transcendence, air's subtle wisdom can seem insubstantial, even irrelevant. We rarely honor those who clarify complex ideas, who facilitate genuine dialogue across differences, or who maintain perspective amid emotional storms. Yet without this integrative element, all other forms of psychological development remain fragmented and isolated. Physical sensations without conceptual understanding, passionate impulses without thoughtful direction, emotions without meaningful interpretation. This chapter explores air as psychological energy, the connecting force that enables clear thinking, effective communication, social intelligence, and the perspective-taking that transcends limited viewpoints. Through this exploration, you may discover that what appears most ephemeral, the capacity to understand, to communicate, to see beyond immediate circumstances, actually represents one of the most powerful dimensions of human capability, the psychology of thought and communication. Beneath the surface expressions of human understanding lies a fundamental quality that makes meaning possible, the capacity for thought. This quality manifests through several interconnected dimensions that together create the psychological bridges connecting us with ourselves, others, and the world beyond immediate experience. Analysis, the clarifying breeze. At its core, thought begins with analysis, the capacity to break complex wholes into component parts, to distinguish between different aspects of experience, and to recognize patterns across seemingly disparate phenomena. This analytical intelligence allows you to perceive order within chaos, to identify cause-effect relationships beyond mere correlation, and to understand complex systems through their constituent elements and interactions. Consider for a moment how fundamentally your analytical capacity shapes your experience. When you encounter a difficult situation, your ability to distinguish between various factors determines whether you respond with effective action or helpless confusion. This discriminating intelligence creates the clarity necessary for meaningful engagement with life's complexity. Your relationship with analytical thinking significantly influences your sense of agency and competence. Some people naturally pass complex situations into manageable components, identifying relevant factors while filtering irrelevant noise, developing conceptual frameworks that organize understanding. Others struggle with this discriminating function, experiencing complexity as overwhelming rather than clarifying, finding themselves lost in details without perceiving organizing patterns or unable to distinguish significant from trivial. Neuroscience research on executive function illuminates the biological foundations of analytical capacity through studies of the prefrontal cortex, the brain region responsible for working memory, attentional control, and cognitive flexibility. This evolutionarily recent neural network enables the distinctively human capacity for abstract thought, allowing us to mentally manipulate concepts rather than merely responding to concrete stimuli, to consider hypothetical scenarios beyond immediate reality, and to perceive relationships invisible to direct perception. Developing analytical intelligence involves both expanding cognitive capacity and refining discriminative precision, strengthening your ability to hold multiple factors in awareness simultaneously, to recognize subtle distinctions that might escape casual observation, to identify recurring patterns across diverse contexts, and to construct conceptual frameworks that organize understanding in meaningful ways. This development occurs through both formal education that explicitly trains analytical thinking and through diverse life experiences that present varying forms of complexity, requiring thoughtful engagement. This analytical capacity grows through practice with progressively challenging material. Working with ideas just beyond your current understanding, engaging with perspectives different from your familiar frameworks, attempting to articulate complex concepts with precision, and receiving feedback that reveals blind spots or logical inconsistencies in your thinking. These experiences gradually build both the neural architecture and practical skill required for sophisticated analytical intelligence. Perspective. The expansive view. Beyond immediate analysis, thought requires perspective, the capacity to view situations from multiple angles, to consider context beyond the immediately visible, and to transcend limited viewpoints that might otherwise constrain understanding. This perspectival intelligence allows you to recognize how different positions, histories, and values create legitimately different interpretations of the same events. To understand current circumstances within larger temporal frameworks beyond momentary conditions, and to perceive how your own particular standpoint shapes what appears self-evidently true from your position. Consider how dramatically perspective transforms your understanding and response. When facing conflict with another person, your ability to momentarily step outside your own position, to genuinely consider how the situation appears from their viewpoint, shaped by different experiences, values, and information, determines whether the interaction devolves into opposing monologues or evolves toward genuine dialogue. This perspective-taking capacity creates the possibility for understanding beyond mere agreement or disagreement, for connection across genuine difference. Your relationship with perspective significantly influences your adaptability and wisdom. Some people naturally consider multiple viewpoints before forming judgments, recognize how their particular position limits what they can perceive, and maintain appropriate humility about their conclusions given the inevitably partial nature of any single perspective. Others become entrenched in single viewpoints, mistaking their partial view for complete understanding, unable to recognize how position shapes perception rather than simply revealing objective truth. These differences profoundly affect everything from interpersonal relationships to cultural and political engagement. Neuroscience research on theory of mind, the capacity to attribute mental states different from our own to others, provides insight into the biological foundations of perspective-taking. Studies using functional neuroimaging reveal specific neural networks activated when considering others' thoughts and feelings, with this capacity following developmental trajectories that can be enhanced through appropriate experience or limited through insufficient opportunity to practice this essential social cognitive skill. Developing perspectival intelligence involves both cognitive flexibility and emotional regulation, strengthening your ability to temporarily suspend certainty about your own viewpoint, to imaginatively inhabit positions different from your familiar stance, to distinguish between understanding another perspective and necessarily agreeing with it, and to maintain receptivity even when encountering ideas that challenge cherished assumptions. This development occurs through both diverse social experiences that expose you to genuinely different viewpoints and through conceptual frameworks that explicitly acknowledge the relationship between standpoint and understanding. This perspective-taking capacity grows through deliberate practice with increasingly challenging viewpoints, beginning with positions only moderately different from your own before gradually engaging with more divergent perspectives. Practicing articulating others' positions with sufficient accuracy that they would recognize their views in your description, and developing comfort with the temporary cognitive dissonance that inevitably accompanies genuine consideration of alternative frameworks. These experiences gradually build both the cognitive flexibility and emotional tolerance required for sophisticated perspective-taking. Communication, the connecting current. Analysis and perspective remain isolated within individual consciousness without communication. The capacity to translate internal understanding into external expression that others can comprehend, to receive others' expressions with accurate interpretation, and to participate in the collaborative creation of shared meaning. This communicative intelligence allows you to bridge the fundamental separation between minds, to coordinate complex collective action through shared understanding, and to benefit from the accumulated wisdom of human culture transmitted through symbolic exchange. Consider how fundamentally communication shapes both individual development and collective possibility. Your ability to articulate complex experiences with precision, to listen beyond others' words to their intended meaning, to adapt expression based on others' comprehension rather than merely your preferred style. These capacities determine whether exchange creates genuine understanding or merely parallel monologues. This communicative bridge creates the foundation for both intimate connection and large-scale cooperation, beyond what any individual could accomplish alone. Your relationship with communication significantly influences your personal effectiveness and sense of belonging. Some people naturally translate thoughts into clear expression, adapt communication to different audiences without losing essential meaning, and create dialogue rather than merely taking conversational turns. Others struggle with verbal articulation despite clear internal understanding, fail to recognize when communication hasn't created shared comprehension, or speak primarily to express rather than to be understood. These differences profoundly affect everything from intimate relationships to professional advancement to community participation. Neuroscience research on language processing provides insight into the remarkable human capacity for symbolic communication through studies of specialized brain regions like Broca's and Wernicke's areas. These neural networks enable the uniquely human ability to encode and decode arbitrary symbols with shared meanings, to generate infinite novel expressions from finite linguistic elements, and to communicate about abstract concepts, hypothetical scenarios, and events distant in time and space. Capacities that dramatically expand the range of possible coordination and collaboration. Developing communicative intelligence involves both expressive precision and receptive accuracy, strengthening your ability to find words that capture subtle distinctions in meaning, to organize complex ideas into coherent structures others can follow, to listen beyond literal content to intended meaning, and to adapt expression based on others' comprehension, rather than merely your preferred style. This development occurs through both formal education in linguistic skill and diverse social experiences that present varying communicative challenges requiring thoughtful adaptation. This communicative capacity grows through practice with increasingly sophisticated exchange, attempting to articulate increasingly complex ideas with precision, engaging with diverse audiences requiring different approaches, receiving feedback about how your communication lands versus how you intended it, and studying models of exceptional clarity and effectiveness. These experiences gradually build both the linguistic facility and interpersonal attunement required for sophisticated communication. Integration. The synthesizing breath. Beyond individual analytical, perspectival, and communicative functions, thought requires integration, the capacity to synthesize diverse elements into coherent wholes, to perceive relationships between seemingly separate domains, and to maintain balance between specialized knowledge and comprehensive understanding. This integrative intelligence allows you to connect insights across disciplinary boundaries, to maintain coherent identity amid diverse roles and responsibilities, and to perceive meaningful patterns that unite apparently disconnected phenomena into larger systems. Consider how essential integration is for meaningful understanding in any domain. The capacity to connect findings from neuroscience, psychology, philosophy, and contemplative traditions creates richer understanding of human experience than any single perspective alone could provide. The ability to perceive relationships between personal health, social connection, economic systems, and environmental conditions enables more effective responses to complex challenges than isolated interventions addressing single factors. This integrative vision creates the possibility for holistic understanding beyond fragmented specialization. Your relationship with integration significantly influences your wisdom and effectiveness. Some people naturally perceive connections across different domains of knowledge, maintain coherent narrative identity despite diverse experiences, and recognize recurring patterns across apparently different phenomena. Others become trapped in compartmentalized thinking, unable to transfer insights between contexts, creating fragmented rather than integrated understanding despite sophisticated knowledge within particular domains. These differences profoundly affect everything from personal meaning-making to professional innovation to societal problem-solving. Neuroscience research on large-scale brain networks illuminates how integration operates through studies of the default mode network, interconnected brain regions active during introspection, autobiographical memory, and imagining others' perspectives. This neural system enables the distinctively human capacity to connect diverse experiences into coherent narratives, to perceive meaningful patterns beyond immediate sensory data, and to maintain continuous identity despite changing circumstances, functions essential for integrated rather than fragmented understanding. Developing integrative intelligence involves both expansive connection and meaningful organization. Strengthening your ability to perceive relationships between apparently separate domains, to transfer insights from one context to others where they might apply, to recognize recurring patterns across diverse manifestations, and to organize knowledge into coherent frameworks rather than isolated facts. This development occurs through both multidisciplinary education that explicitly examines connections between fields and through reflective practices that cultivate pattern recognition beyond surface appearances. This integrative capacity grows through practice with increasingly complex synthesis, attempting to connect insights from different disciplines addressing similar phenomena, exploring metaphors and analogies that reveal hidden relationships between apparently different domains, examining recurring patterns across diverse contexts, and developing conceptual frameworks that organize understanding without oversimplification. These experiences gradually build both the cognitive flexibility and pattern recognition required for sophisticated integration.